morning. How is everybody this morning? It always takes a few seconds to click in, and I never know if you guys can hear me or not yet. So give me some comments, some likes, some hey, how are you? And I'll know you guys are there and listening. So thank you very much for joining me for my Facebook Live this morning. Um, there I am. Okay. As always, please feel free to ask questions in the comments and I will answer throughout the live. So just ask away. If you are listening to the recording, I will regularly check back and answer questions. So again, feel free to ask your questions. For those of you on the call, say hello. Let me know you're there. Why don't you tell me a quirky thing your dog does, like bark at dust bunnies. I had a client whose dog, barked at the shadows in the door, like your patio door when it gets night. So tell me what quirky thing your dog does, because that's always fun to hear. Okay, while we give people a couple minutes to join us, I want to talk about something that came up a couple of times this week, and I thought of you guys. As some of you know, I have a 5-month-old border collie named Wicca. I've been documenting her training from the day I brought her home at 8 weeks old and sharing the whole journey on Facebook on a group called Raising Your Puppy. So if you'd like an invite, just go over there and ask for membership. This is the age where stuff can start to go downhill. 5 months is when they hit adolescence. They start to lose their puppy behaviors and start to practice adult behaviors. With Wicca, so one of the things that starts to happen as they enter adolescence is they start to wander further away. That invisible leash that's really strong with a puppy and keeps them safe and alive by staying close to you starts to disintegrate, and they start to investigate their surroundings. So I live out in the country and I have lots of clients who are like, oh, my puppy never leaves the property. My puppy's so well behaved. And then they hit 5 months old and all of a sudden, oh yeah, the puppy's leaving the property. Honestly, it's like they have a calendar. So back to Wicca. I was prepared for all of this. I know what happens. I tell my clients about it all the time. So I was mentally prepared. She's a bird girl now and no longer looks like that little roly-poly puppy. All of a sudden, I see a lot of people, behaviors they've allowed as a puppy, now their dog looks like a grown-up dog or more like a grown-up dog. And they start to go, oh yeah, maybe I don't love that so much. But for me, it's easy to forget she is still really young and to manage my expectations. I find this is a tough time for a lot of trainers. Their dogs have some skills and they start expecting them all the time, but the puppies are still really young and inexperienced. And the more you put them in situations where they fail, the more frustrated you become, and the more frustrated the dog becomes. So weekly, we've been going on outings, Wicca and a friend of ours, continuing to give the dogs new experiences. And because I think that's really important for at the very minimum, their first year of life, that give them regularly new experiences, maintain that socializing as they hit their weirdness and their defense drives kick in and they're starting to alert bark on stuff. You want to carefully continue to expose them. Looking back on last weekend's outings, my expectations were too high and we both ended up frustrated and exasperated. We started with breakfast on an outside patio. It's a good opportunity to teach your dogs not just about walking in public, but sitting quietly in public and watching the world go by. Wicca was really well behaved. I've been working on this since she was young, so she understands when I sit down, sit quietly, and I'll reward you. It's the same behavior I use when I eat dinner in the house, stuff like that. It's something she's comfortable with. And that went really well. But then we decided to take the dogs for a walk, and this is where it all started to fall apart. We probably spent at least a half hour sitting having breakfast. So she'd been really good for a long time. Got to remember, she's a 5-month-old puppy. Sitting quietly watching the world go by is a huge challenge on her little brain. When we started walking, it all went to crap. It was ugly. Wicca was arguing with her head halter, started pulling, wouldn't listen, wouldn't pay attention. I tried to do ODR game. Remember, observe, don't react. So you stand still and wait for the dog to connect. And it took her a solid minute to connect, which is a huge amount of time for her. And this is where I took a step back. We took them back to the car because they were both acting like this. And this is where I really have to take a step back and not instinctively blame the dog. I hear it all the time. Oh, my dog is being stubborn. My dog is being bad. And the question you have to ask yourself is why? Is there a reason? Dogs do what works. So if they're being bad, what was the problem? But the other side of that is sometimes, especially with young dogs, if they're uncomfortable, they're hard to live with. They're hard to train because they're uncomfortable. In this case, I quickly found out she was really thirsty. It was hot. It wasn't that hot, but obviously for her it was. When we got back to the car, she drank water for like 2-3 minutes. So obviously she was really thirsty. With young dogs, especially when they're uncomfortable, it's like young kids. They're uncomfortable. They're hard to live with because they're just meh. So you always have to pay attention to that. But my disappointment in myself was, instead of having an outing that ended well, we had an outing that ended yucky. So now my next outing, I've spent this whole week working on getting her used to it, her head halter, reminding her, you like the head halter, it's not so bad. Getting her comfortable with getting it on and off. The last time on our outing I went to put it on, she was like, nope, I'm not putting that thing on. So I've spent the week working on that stuff, and now we're ready this week to try another outing. So that's it. When things go bad, that's fine. It's not a big deal. One bad experience is not going to do anything. The problem is, what are you going to do different the next time? So that was our weekend, last weekend. And hopefully you've got something you can think about. Where is it going bad? Because I hear it all the time. Oh, I take my dog out, my dog pulls on leash. Well, why are you still taking him out? If he's pulling on leash, you've got to change something. Be careful about falling into that trap. Well, I do this, my dog does this, and we do it every day. And now my dog's learning this is what this looks like. Like with all failure, the goal is to embrace the failure, assess what happened, and come up with a new plan. Then try again. Send me a comment if this has happened to you and now you're thinking, oh yeah, maybe I could do this different the next time to make this situation work out better for myself. Okay, back to the topic for today. The question is, the title is it meatball worthy? My whole training philosophy is to reward what I want and stop what I don't want. I've talked in previous Facebook Lives about using management to stop what I don't want. This week, I want to talk about being more aware of what you are rewarding. There's a number of concepts I'm going to cover this morning. First is how to use rewards strategically, and secondly, how every reward has value. Every time your dog gets rewarded, a behavior grows stronger. That means you have to be thoughtful about what your dog is thinking when you reward. To get this information, partly see what your dog is looking at. For example, if I am working a dog who is reactive, I am rewarding him for looking at the distraction, the thing he reacts to. I am not rewarding him from looking away from it, because that won't help him get better. The final goal when I'm working with a reactive dog is that he look at the distractor and be like, meh, and walk away. So I need to make that non-exciting. I can't teach that by looking away. I have to teach it by looking. Of course, I realize you are always guessing what your dog is thinking about, but your dog's next behavior will let you know how accurate you were with your guesses. So if the behavior gets worse that you were trying to fix, then maybe you're not rewarding the right thing. If the behavior gets better than you were. Let me give you an example. I had a Siberian Husky named Max. Not surprising, being a Siberian Husky, we spent a lot of time working on recalls, teaching him to come when called. I thought it was rewarding coming when called. What I was rewarding was him poking my pocket with his nose. And this is what. I could call Max and he would come. And then when he'd get to me, I'd reach into my pocket, pull out a cookie, and feed him. While I was reaching into my pocket and pulling out the cookie, he would regularly poke me with his nose. And then I would reward him. So I didn't just create coming when called. In fact, I didn't put the full value of the reward into the coming when called. I put the full value of the reward into poking my pocket, which I hated. And now, because of that, I am really careful that that I reward out of my hand. So I coach all my clients to do this. If I have to reach into my pocket for a cookie, I put the pile of cookies in my hand and I go, good boy. I don't feed them the cookie. I do not want to pair this behavior, pulling food out of pocket, with delivering food. Mostly when I'm training, I have the cookies in my hand. So when my dog is appropriate, I just reach and reward them. I did do a Facebook Live earlier on making sure you're rewarding the right thing, not rewarding super excited behavior. I think it's April 24th if you want to look further into this kind of concept. So, do you have a dog that can be a little obnoxious about food, has some behaviors you'd like to get rid of, like you pull your bag of treats out and he starts jumping on you? This is what I'm talking about. Inadvertently, in as you were starting to try to train something, you rewarded jumping on you when you have a bag of food. This brings me to another place that people reward what they don't want inadvertently. When you are holding the treats in your hand, you become really aware of how your dog is behaving, because if he's climbing you to get the cookies, you notice it. Always make sure when you start to work with a dog, always realize that working with you is a reward to the dog. You giving him your attention is a huge reward. So you want to teach your dog to be nice and calm, because that's what we all want, right? So if you go to work with your dog and your dog's jumping and barking and you go sit, you just rewarded jumping and barking. But if you pick up your cookies to work with your dog and just give him a second to settle down, and that second could be a minute depending on the dog, and then you're like, sit. Now you've not just rewarded the sit, you've also rewarded, before I pay attention to you, you have to be calm. Always keep in mind, you get what you reward. That means if you reward a slow recall, so you call your dog and your dog saunters over at a slow pace, then you're telling your dog, that's what I want your recall to look like. I want your recall to look slow, because that's what gets you cookies. Nobody wants that. You want fast. I want my recall to be, I call you, you spin on a dime and run to me as fast as you can. So let's say you're in the backyard working on recalls. You call your dog and he saunters over to you. I totally get it. You're like, but he came, I want to give him the cookie. And I'm not saying you can't give him the cookie, but how can we make the next recall quicker so you don't have to reward that? Here's the part of the concept that took me a while to figure out. I understood don't reward slow, but what can you do to make it better? What can you do so you set your dog up for success? And it's so simple, but I couldn't figure it out in my head, and now I can. You got to make it easier. So what does that mean? If my dog comes slow, I could get closer. It's amazing. It's a human thing. We all do it. I tell the person, let's go work on your recalls. And right away, they go 20 feet away from their dog. Well, if the dog comes slow at 20 feet, does he come slow at 2 feet? Maybe he comes great at 2 feet. So then I would do 10 recalls at 2 feet and do 1 recall at 5 feet. Does he still maintain that speed, that confidence? Then I would stay at 5 feet. So you're always making it easier till you get the confidence, the speed, the drive you want, and then you start adding distance. This is a big deal in agility. You can start behavior slow, but then you want to build that confidence and speed so that you don't teach your dog to walk around an agility course. Another thing you could do to speed up your recall is say your dog's name and run away. Always chasing you is going to increase the speed. So you reward a bunch of those, create that as the new habit, and then you go back to standing still up close and see what happens. So try to remember not to feed crap. So if you say sit and your dog's like, oh, and you have to say it again, and then they think about it, and then they're like, okay, I'll slowly go into a sit. Then you give them a cookie. They're like, oh, this is good enough. If you went to work and got paid for good enough, anybody who has kids, You understand if you ask them to do something and they give you subpar work and you reward that, you give them whatever they wrote, their allowance, whatever, that's all you ever going to get. But if you start bonusing them for really good work, you'll start to get better work. And then we're going to go to talking about the hierarchy of treats. Every dog has loves and likes. Some of them are odd, like carrying rocks, and some of them are more unexpected, like some dogs who love when you sweep the floors. But they all have them, and the more you recognize what your dog loves and likes, the more tools you have in your training bag. Does your dog like toys better than food? A lot do, but not all. Toys are much harder work for the human, but usually engage a much higher drive, so the dog's more excited to work with you. Does he likes hot dogs best? Or maybe your dog is more of a tuna brownie guy or liver bits. The quality of the food you use makes a change in behavior. For example, last night at our puppy agility class, a lady came out with her dog and her dog was looking around and sniffing and she was using kibble. So we switched her to higher treats and the dog was like, oh, okay, I'll work for you for hot dogs. And you're like, well, yeah, of course you have hot dogs. But the thing is, we're creating the habit of coming out of the crate and working. After 20 times of that, the dog's not going to come out, look around and question your quality of treats. The dog's just in the habit of, I come out, I work with you. So you're creating mindsets, you're creating habits. If you're fighting with if your dog comes out, you're fighting with them, stop sniffing, stop sniffing, stop sniffing. So now the dog comes out and the habit becomes talk to the paw. If instead you come out and go, hey, I have hot dogs, dog's like, oh, okay. So you're always working on rewarding, creating habits that you want. So I want to talk to you about how to use multiple different values at one training session. This allows you to continue to reward, but also isolate what you really want. I am working on building value for the grooming table and being handled. This has always been on my list. My dogs are not great about having their nails done. We get them done, but they're not happy about it. And I would like dogs who are like, here you go, take my paw. If you watch videos of like in the zoo, they can teach the gorilla to stick its paw somewhere and get its nails cut. Pretty sure I can teach my dogs to do the same thing. So this is one of my goals this summer. So I've been doing this for a few days. My dog now happily gets on the table, stays on the table for a few minutes, and then gets off. I'm rewarding kibble because it was just getting on a table. Now I'm going to increase the challenge to start handling. I'm going to run my hands down the dog's shoulder. Soon as I switch to handling, I'm going to move up to hot dogs. So if you're just standing there, I'm going to feed you kibble. But if I put a hand on you, I'm going to feed you hot dogs. Now, my dogs aren't thrilled about this, but they really want the hot dogs. So they're like, fine, I'll stand here while you touch me. But eventually, they're going to get comfortable with that. And now they're comfortable with the shoulder. Fine, I'm going to touch your elbow, and then I'm going to touch your wrist, and then I'm going to pick up your paw. Where the hot dogs kick in is going to keep moving up. So now, right now, it's as soon as I touch you, you get a hot dog. But maybe in 3 more sessions, you only get a hot dog if I go to your elbow. And then you'll only get a hot dog if I go to your wrist. Then you'll only get a hot dog if I pick up your paw. So I'm rewarding all the other stuff, but that's a kibble reward. I'm going up to hot dogs as soon as it gets hard and I'm doing stuff they really don't like picking up their paws and touching them with the toenail clippers. So one more example on using hierarchy. You're working on recalls in the forest. You're at the stage where your dog regularly stops and checks in. Good job. That's a great place to be. And you reward this behavior by calling them and giving them a kibble. Now you want to take it to the next level. So you call your dog when he isn't looking at you. This is going to be much harder for your dog than when he's already chosen to look at you, because when he's chosen to look at you, his focus is on you. When he's not looking at you, his focus is on the forest, and you're asking him to disengage that focus and focus on you. So when he's not looking and you call and he comes, you're going to reward him with a meatball or a hot dog. If he's looking at you and you call him and he comes, he gets a kibble. So I'm still rewarding the kibble recall or the looking at me recall, but I really want him to go, wow, when I turn away, she gives me hot dogs. As this becomes easier for your dog, you can reduce to kibble. And then eventually, I really don't reward that much when they come when called. But I get this question all the time. Will I always have to reward my recall? The answer is no and yes. Your dog will learn to come when called, and you will create a habit of coming when called if you follow the steps. Once the behavior is at a pretty high level and it's a habit, no, I do not reward every recall, but I'm always ready to reward amazing recalls. It's like I was saying with the kids doing the work, and if they do something really quick, like every night you ask your kid to unload the dishwasher and he complains and he bitches and he finally does it, but it takes a half hour and there's a lot of complaining. And one night you say, hey, can you unload the dishwasher? And your kid gets up, goes and unloads the dishwasher. I want that to stand out. I want my kid to go, wow, she really appreciated that. So I might go, you know what? Let's go out for ice cream or whatever it is your kid likes, or why don't you get an extra half hour on the Xbox? So bonuses are create great behaviors. So my kid is now going to go, hey, when I got up right away and did the dishwasher, she really, really liked that. Now, eventually that will become an expected behavior, but at the beginning, I really want to stand it out. So that's when a bonus comes in, and that's how I use recall rewards with my adult dogs. As long as the behavior stays strong. If it starts to weaken for whatever reason, meaning my dog is not consistently coming when called, I will go back into training mode. When you see your dog do something amazing, you want to make sure he notices. For example, we were out walking in the forest and the dog scared up a bird, a grouse that was sitting in the long grass. Out of curiosity, the dog was running in front of me chasing the bird, which was about 5-10 feet ahead of him. And just for fun, I called him. And it was amazing. He spun on a dime and ran right back to me. I happened to have a toy in my hand, so we had like a 2-minute tug. We had a party. I was like, wow, that was spectacular. That was amazing. I want you to remember that because that was incredible. So that's it. He knew. He was like, wow, she really liked that. You want to not just be like, hey, that was good. You want to be like, oh my God, you are the best puppy in the whole wide world. So never forget, you want to always reward your dog, even if it's just, hey, thank you very much for coming when called. I'm always rewarding. I may not be using food, but I am rewarding my dog all the time, even from simple acknowledgement like, hey, good job. That was really nice. Lots to think about. Anybody have any questions? Okay, so that's all I've got to say about isn't meatball worthy. I want you to think about your rewards, and is what your dog just did meatball worthy, or is it just, hey, good boy worthy? The more strategic you are with your rewards, the better results you're going to get from your dog. Join us next Friday, like every Friday morning at 10 a.m. for our next Facebook Live. Have a wonderful long weekend. If you're Canadian, we have a long weekend this weekend. And yeah, we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much for listening.